My name's Kyle Oliver, Principal Product Manager for BIG-IQ. This is Jim McCarron, one of our Senior Global Solution Architects. And we're going to take you through BIG-IQ 101. We're not going to go too in-depth on anything in this session. It's intended to sort of give you the high-level overview of what BIG-IQ can do. We do have another session or two sessions tomorrow where we're actually going to do more of a demo and a little bit deeper dive on the product. But feel free to ask questions as we go. I understand this session is being recorded, so if you're going to ask a question, if you can either run up and speak into that mic or remind me to repeat the question.
I can pass it around as well.
All right, so here's our high-level agenda of what we're going to go over. We're going to talk about what BIG-IQ can manage, and then I'll talk about kind of some of the operational management pieces of BIG-IQ. Largely, this is what people used to do with Enterprise Manager. And then Jim's going to get into more about the object level management versus the new or relatively new application template service catalog information. And then we're going to talk a bit about monitoring. And then we'll take your questions and maybe do a little bit of demo if we don't run out of time. All right. So I mentioned a little bit about the application focus. One question before I really get rolling. How many of you have BIG-IQ? So I would estimate for the recording, half of the room, maybe a little over half the room. How many of you that have BIG-IQ, well, I guess, how many of you have seen a demo or have BIG-IQ 6.0 or if you're really cutting edge 6.01 since it came out a little less than a week ago? All right, so couple hands in the air for the recording. So for those of you that haven't seen it, we'll have some screenshots of it coming, and also, as I said, we can do a bit of a demo. We'll do a lot of a demo of it tomorrow. We've introduced this concept of service catalog and application templates, essentially allowing you as the F5 admin to create a catalog of services that your application owners can deploy from. And one of the benefits of using those templates, well, there's lots of benefits of using those templates in BIG-IQ, and we'll talk about a little bit of those as we go. So one of the benefits is application teams can manage their own app deployments, and after those deployments are out there, we've got fine-grained role-based access control, so those folks can manage their own applications, monitor their own applications, do things like pool member up, down, virtual server up, down. Essentially, if the admins want to give them access to do all of that, they can largely manage their own change window activity, so you're not buried in tickets or you're not getting the call at 2 o'clock in the morning to say, hey, I finished the service on my app server, can you put that back in rotation? They should be able to do it themselves. And another benefit of this is custom dashboards for the app owner as well as for you folks as administrators, where you can get the per app stats and per app analytics, as well as the application owner can get these things. So a lot of times admins are being asked for, can you tell me how the load balancing is working, or if I'm load balancing between my application servers, that sort of thing. Are any of my application servers showing as slow? Things like that. So the app owner themselves can get that information. And actually, I don't talk about it here, but you have the ability to, if you want to just give those application owners read-only access so they can see the information about their apps and see the performance of their apps, but you're not ready to turn over the keys to the kingdom to them to say, you can actually bring new pool members up and down, bring virtual servers up and down, things like that, you can give them that read-only view. And then finally, we introduced the ability to do auto-scaling, where you can basically set up monitors inside the BIG-IQ that say, if the big IPs serving this application cross certain thresholds for CPU utilization, memory utilization, ASM bypass, ASM memory, things like that, you can have BIG-IQ automatically scale out the application services for that application and spin up more big IPs to handle the load for that application. So let me build out this slide. For LTM and DNS management, we have the ability to manage LTM and GSLB objects. The GSLB objects piece is relatively new in 6.0, where you can actually do things like create and delete wide IPs and the various pieces and parts of GSLB from BIG-IQ. We've had the monitoring of those things for a while, but we've just added the ability to manage those things recently. We've got some unified dashboards around LTM and DNS, as well as some reporting and alerting. This is outside of that application-centric view that I was talking about, so you can see the information about your estate across the board. Improve compliance with enterprise-wide audit trails. So everything that's done through BIG-IQ, we audit all. We have an audit log for all of those things. So you can go in and you can drill down on those logs and see who made what change when, and actually see the diff of what is that change that they made in a JSON format that'll show you this is what the config was before, this is what they changed it to. Good for compliance. I talked about role-based management a little bit. So starting in BIG-IQ 5.4, which was the end of last year, we introduced very fine-grained role-based access control. So you can control down to the object what a user can. You can basically create a resource group to say this is the set of objects, and then you can create a role type to say this is the set of actions. Marry those things two things together on a role, and I think we've got a slide on it coming up. And basically control exactly what objects can a user see and exactly what actions can they take on them. And we've also got some canned or built-in roles for things like you want somebody to be able to manage your ASM configuration. You can just give them the web application security admin. They can go in and see all of your ASM configuration and handle that piece and not have access to other pieces and parts. And for each of the kind of module areas within BIG-IQ, we have 4 roles. We have a view role, an edit role, a deployment role, and an overall admin role. So you can, the edit role allows the user to stage changes on the BIG-IQ, but not push them out to the big IP. So if you've got folks that you want to allow to stage those changes for you, but somebody needs to sort of check their work and then push them out, you could give somebody just that edit role. They set that stuff up on BIG-IQ, and then somebody with the deployment role or admin role can push those changes out or schedule those changes to be pushed out later. SSL certificate management, so the ability to import certs keys or PKCS12 bundles into BIG-IQ and attach those to SSL profiles and things like that and deploy it out to your big IPs. We also have alerting based on expiration of these certs, so you can set a threshold that says, hey, I want to get an email when this cert is going to expire in N days. And then a unified view of the health of your devices. I don't know why it says DNS there. It should be all of your devices. So you can get in one view, is everything healthy? And then I'll just build this one out from a security management aspect. A lot of this stuff is the same. Centralized security policies, so the ability to create one policy on BIG-IQ and then attach that same policy out to multiple virtual servers and deploy it out to your big IPs. And we can do that as part of the application templates starting in 6.0. So you can basically set, or your SecOps guys can set, this is the standard policy that I want deployed with every application of this type. And when the application gets deployed out to the big IP, it's automatically secured with that ASM policy. We also have some interesting things, especially around ASM, where we can do centralized learning for those policies. So if you've got the same policy that's spread out to multiple ASM devices, without BIG-IQ, each one of those devices is going to be learning about the traffic individually. With BIG-IQ and Big IP 13 and above, you can actually centralize that learning into BIG-IQ such that all of those policies and all of the traffic about those policies is being reported back into BIG-IQ, and then you can log into BIG-IQ and select, do I want to accept this learning, and then use BIG-IQ to push that updated policy back out. And actually in 6.0, we introduced the ability to set so that deployment of that policy can happen automatically. So you can sort of set the thresholds of when you want to learn those things, when you want to deploy the updated policy, so it can kind of be an automated process and keep those ASMs in sync. Unified security dashboards and reports and alerts. So one place to go to see all of the events for your ASM, all of the information about your APM user sessions. We've got great dashboards there. Again, same as I talked before about LTM and DNS for the audit trails and the role-based management. The ability to manage and distribute signatures. So as F5 releases new signatures for ASM, BIG-IQ can download those updated signatures and push those signatures out to all of the ASM devices that need it. And then again, get a unified view of the health of your devices. And then from a device management view, I'll build this one out. So we can catalog and inventory up to 600 BIG-IP devices. And this is really 600 for AFM and LTM, or kind of basic device management information. For some of the more complex modules like APM and ASM, the number of devices that we can manage from a single BIG-IQ or a cluster of BIG-IQs is lower just because of the complexity of those policies. Backup and restore, images, configuration, and snapshots. So this one's kind of twofold. So BIG-IQ can be a centralized backup location where you can set up schedules to say, back up my BIG-IPs on this schedule, retain those on BIG-IQ. BIG-IQ even has the ability to archive those config files or those backup files off to another location if you want to set up a DR type scenario. But we also take configuration snapshots in the database. So what that allows you to do is roll back your configuration on an object by object level to be able to say, I did a deployment from BIG-IQ and something broke or it had unintended consequences. I can roll back to the configuration of just that object to the prior snapshot. Don't have to go in and rekey any configuration files. I can just say, deploy the configuration back from this prior snapshot, and it will guarantee that that configuration goes back to where it was. You can take the time to figure out why you had those unintended consequences, and then push that configuration later. Upgrade devices. BIG-IQ can be a centralized upgrade server, so you can take BIG-IP image files or ISOs of any type, whether it's a full release, a hotfix, an engineering hotfix, load those onto BIG-IQ, and then use BIG-IQ to push those images out to the BIG-IPs and fully upgrade them. And there's a number of checks that are built in, or a number of things you can do as part of that process. We have a pre and post upgrade check, which will allow you, what it does is it takes kind of an inventory and a state of the objects that are on that BIG-IP and says like, okay, I had 10 virtual servers on this device and 9 of them were online before the upgrade, runs through the upgrade, does that same check, and then does a diff to say, are the objects still there, and do they still have the same state? So if you do an upgrade and you need to quickly check to make sure that all of the same services are still online, the BIG-IQ process makes that easier. It also allows you to do things like create a backup before and after upgrade if you want to do that. And it's got some pause options in there, so you can say, just push the images out to the BIG-IP and then stop and wait till I come back in and move it to the next step. And then it's got a pause option before reboot. So if you want to have BIG-IQ push those images out and then wait until you're ready for it to go to the next step, which would be take that image and install it into the install partition that you told it to install into, and then wait for reboot, you can do all of that through BIG-IQ. And I know we've got a number of customers that are using that feature for log in, take the image they need to upgrade all their devices to, and set it to push the images over the weekend. And rather than having to log into, N big IPs and get to that install screen and upload it, or, write your, favorite SSH or SCP script to send it out to all of your big IPs, BIG-IQ can manage all of that for you. Similarly, fine-grained role-based access control, the ability to group devices. So this is twofold. You can both take what we call static groups, where you can take any of the big IPs that are managed by the BIG-IQ and put them in a group. And we also have something called dynamic groups, where you can choose a parent group, usually the root group, and then say, this is my search filter that I want to use to create this group. And then what I usually do in my demo is I have a group of servers that have BOS in the host name for Boston, because I'm based here. And I just put BOS as the search term for that group. And as devices it'll take all the devices that are already there and put them into that group. But the really cool thing about it is, as I add more devices to that BIG-IQ, they dynamically get added into that group. So one of the things I usually demo is that I use that Boston dynamic group together with my backup schedule, so that my devices are all backed up in the Boston data center at the same time. And I don't have to remember, I just added another device, I need to go add it into the backup schedule. If I've got a dynamic group, it automatically happens. iHealth integration. So BIG-IQ can also upload QK views, can download the QK views from your big IPs and upload them into iHealth. You can do this ad hoc as part of a case activity, because you've all opened a case with F5 and the form email that comes basically that says, give me a QK view for the affected devices. You can have BIG-IQ kick off that QK view upload, and you can put the case number right in there. The other cool thing is you can schedule uploads of the QK views on a regular basis up into iHealth, and be able to track and get the latest updates as to what heuristics have been raised for those devices. And we, in BIG-IQ, give you an enterprise-wide view of all of the heuristics that have been hit by your device. So you can see on a heuristic by heuristic basis, this many devices in my environment are impacted by this CVE or whatever has been raised by that heuristic. And we've got links in there to take you both to more information about the heuristic, as well as to an Ask F5 solution that may have more information about mitigation, what releases it fixed in, that sort of stuff. So RBAC concepts, I stole a little bit of my own thunder talking about this earlier, but basically we follow the principle of least privilege. So a user has all of their privileges denied unless they're specifically granted when you get in this fine-grained object or fine-grained RBAC model. So in our model, we define the concepts containing information to the following answers. So who? So what user or group do I want to grant access to? What role or role type? And a role type is basically a set of permissions, which again is down to the object type level. So if you wanted to give somebody, say, read access to the ASM policies, but you wanted to give them full control of pool members or things like that, you can, on an object by object type basis, say, for ASM policies, they've only got read, but for pool members and nodes, they've got full control. And then where? So what objects can they take action on? And this slide just talks about a user can be part of multiple groups, and a user can also have multiple roles, and a role can also be tied to multiple resource groups. So it's very dynamic. And one of the things that it allows you to do is grant access to your users to the BIG-IQ, and then control what they can see and what they can do to the big IPs. And you don't have to grant them access out to the big IPs themselves. So they can just log into BIG-IQ, and you can control what they can see and what they can do. So you got one place to kind of control that role-based access control. And this is a high level of the configuration steps. So you want to define that resource group. So in this case, it's a set of those virtual servers, and then define a custom role. So I talked about this a little bit, and it's probably a little bit hard to see, but so this is a list of the object types. So it starts with HTTP profiles, monitors. It's a whole bunch of different monitor types, and this role or role type has been granted read access to all of those things. And then you tie that together, role type and a resource group get tied into a role, and then you grant users access to that. And those user definitions can be local to the BIG-IQ. They can also be in Active Directory, LDAP, Radius, TACACS, and you can marry that together with BIG-IQ to basically say, people in this Active Directory group get this role on BIG-IQ, so you can manage who gets that access outside of BIG-IQ or inside of BIG-IQ if you want. Is this me still, or is this you?
Next slide. Sorry. That's still you.
Okay. So taking a little bit of time for some of the operational management pieces. We talked a little bit about this already. So this is kind of the main device screen in BIG-IQ. So you get a list of all of your devices, and you can do things like export an inventory file. And what this will do is export out a CSV file that has a bunch of information, more than what is shown here on this screen, including things like what's the license key that's on that device, what are the actual components of that license key that are on the device, some of that stuff that it's not easy to show in this sort of screen. And that information is dynamically updated as devices change. So I've talked to a number of customers that say, oh yeah, we have this all in an Excel spreadsheet or a web page of our own, and they always talk about it's out of date because it never gets routinely updated to have the latest information, whereas BIG-IQ is pulling this information from the actual device. From here, you can also launch a bunch of different activities. So you can schedule your backup, you can do a backup now, you can launch a device install. Basically, a lot of these things you can do in the left-hand column, you can also do from this device management screen. So this is going to tell me the exact, so this is going to animate what I just told you. So we've got new in, let's see, 5.4 was the ability to launch a bulk rediscovery from BIG-IQ itself. So one of the things, and I probably should have talked about this earlier, is if you're managing your devices with BIG-IQ, or if you're managing the configuration of your devices from BIG-IQ, so I haven't gotten into it here, but we have a configuration tab. Right now I'm on the devices tab, so I could, if I only have these devices discovered for management, then I get all of this device information, and I can do things like backup and upgrades and things like that. If I want to manage the actual configuration, so all of the objects that are out on those big IPs, if I'm doing that, if I'm managing it from BIG-IQ, I want to do everything I can to manage those devices through BIG-IQ. So when you go around the BIG-IQ to the big IP and start making changes there, it's going to cause problems. So one of the things that you'll need to do in those cases is do a rediscovery of those devices so that BIG-IQ has the updated information. You used to have to do this on a one-by-one basis or use a script that we have out on downloads. We built into the GUI now the ability to launch that rediscovery. I don't know why it's not highlighting the right thing in this. So the rediscover and reimport is actually above where the box is, and then if you've done the initial step of establishing trust between BIG-IQ and BIG-IP, as I was mentioning earlier, so you've established management, you can do all of these actions, and we talked about most of them already. A couple of things that I'll highlight that weren't covered on the devices slide is you can do some script management. So you can basically load TMSH scripts or bash scripts onto the BIG-IQ and use BIG-IQ to push those scripts out to the big IPs. So A couple of different use cases for that. If you have a job that needs to run out on those devices that BIG-IQ can't control, or you need to get information back from those devices that's not shown in BIG-IQ, you can use a script for that. Or if there's an object type that BIG-IQ can't centrally manage yet, you can write the quick script to do that via TMSH and use that information from there. And basically, when you run those scripts, you get the log information from those scripts back into BIG-IQ, and you can review it all from there. License management, so BIG-IQ can be a license manager for your BIG-IP virtual editions, and you activate the license on the BIG-IQ, and then you can use BIG-IQ to push those licenses out to BIG-IPs, and then revoke them from BIG-IPs when you need to use that license again. So taking away that step of allow move where you have to call F5 support. They've now automated the allow move in later versions of BIG-IP, but you can do it all centrally from here and get reporting and information about those licenses. And if you're going to do a subscription or ELA program through F5, currently you're going to use BIG-IQ to manage those licenses and report back to F5 the usage of those licenses. So password management. This is the ability to manage the root and admin password for all of your BIG-IPs. I imagine you all have some sort of policy that says the root and admin password of your devices needs to be changed on some sort of schedule, or if an admin who has the password leaves, you need to go change them. You can automate that all through BIG-IQ, and you can change one or the other or both. And basically, you plug those into BIG-IQ, set the devices you want to set that password on, and it pushes out the password change. So I stole my thunder about this one earlier, about the BIG-IP software upgrades. So this is an example of setting up one of those managed device installs where I specify the image I want to upgrade to, give this job a name, and then I've got all these different options. So that pre and post installation assessment, that was that kind of inventory check of the objects and their state on the device prior to upgrade and post upgrade. The ability to perform a backup, this can be before or after or both. Pause after the software image has been copied to the devices, and then pause for reboot confirmation. We also have the ability to install the devices one at a time. This feature was largely designed for upgrading DNS sync groups. So if you've got BIG-IP DNS, formerly known as GTM, in your environment, and you want to upgrade that using BIG-IQ, if you check this box to say install the devices one at a time, BIG-IQ will step your DNS sync group through the proper upgrade to make sure that it gets from the version it's running up to the new version in the proper way for those sync groups. And then talked about this a little bit, the ability to set backup schedules. A fairly vanilla backup scheduler to say, what frequency you can do daily, weekly, monthly. You can have multiple schedules for the same device, multiple devices in different schedules. And then you've got the same options you do if you're doing the backup direct on the BIG-IP. Do you want to include the private keys or not? Do you want to encrypt the backup files? And then this local retention policy is setting how long do you want to keep that backup file on the BIG-IQ. And we've got 3 options here. Delete the backup copy n days after creation. So if you want to sort of roll them off on a time-based schedule. We've also got the keep the last n backups for that job to basically say, if you set that to 3, when you take the 4th backup, it's going to delete the oldest one. And then never delete, which really means you're going to go in there and you're going to manage to say, I know when I want to delete this backup. And if you've taken a backup file and you determine after the schedule has fired that you want to keep it for longer, you can always go in and edit that UCS file in BIG-IQ to say, now never delete this one, or change the retention of that one if you want. And then you just set your schedule here, and then you pick which devices do you want to be, and it can also be a group, as I talked about. So, dynamically from the, if you use that dynamic group like I talked about earlier, you can have that schedule automatically updated to grab those pieces. So if you, as a general principle in the BIG-IQ GUI, if we present you with a table of information like this, you can select a line or row in that table, and it's going to give you down here in the bottom a couple of pieces of information. It's going to give you some basic high-level object preview of the information, and it's also going to give you this related items option. So in this case, I've got the HR virtual server selected up there, and if I click that related items button, I get all of the information about the items that are related to this. So what monitors are using, nodes, pools, pool members, and then each of these things that are here in blue is a link right to that object. So if I need to then navigate to take a look at the monitor for this particular virtual server, I can click that and it'll jump me right to the object there. We've also got global search within BIG-IQ. So up in the upper right-hand corner, there is a magnifying glass, and if you click that, it brings up this global search window, and you can type in what do you want to search for, and that can be a name, it can be an IP address. It also allows you to choose, do you want to search in IP ranges and things like that, and then you can choose whether you want an exact match, and then you can also, so say you wanted to find a particular, you knew what you wanted to find was a pool member, you could jump in there and say search only for pool members, and it's only going to give you this list of, well, in the back it's giving you the list of everything, but if you narrow it to pool members, it'll give you just the pool member information. And then again, as I showed on the related items, this column over here on the right, anywhere where there's the blue links here, that will take you directly to that object. If you select the row in global search, similar to what I was showing in the virtual server there, you can see the object preview and get the related items. One thing that I'll point out, and it's not in this screenshot is from 5.4, but, and I don't know if we've got a screenshot of it later, there's a new icon in 6.0 that appears up here, and it's a little book icon, and you can click that and it'll take you to or give you links to the documentation for that particular BIG-IQ release for both the product itself as well as the API. We've done a bunch of API documentation out on Cloud Docs for BIG-IQ. And the other thing that it gives you is links to the Ansible playbooks that we've created to go with BIG-IQ, especially around the application deployment. Now it's Jim.
Want to see if there's any questions at all?
So you had mentioned groups, that you could create groups of big IPs.
Yep.
Those groups, do they have separate groupings of configuration objects? For instance, if I didn't want configuration objects, for instance, maybe like custom profiles or something, to be able to be deployed on one group of big IPs, does that group have its own repository or grouping, if you will, of configuration objects?
So we don't yet have the tie-in for RBAC and the devices yet. That is something we have on our roadmap to do later. Right now the RBAC is only on the objects itself. But once we get the RBAC on the devices, we should be able to do that pairing to be able to say, these objects can go on these devices, these objects can't go on these devices.
Okay, and then kind of as an extension of that, if I were to have a configuration object that had the same name but maybe conflicting contents, that's something right now that in our environment is kind of an obstacle to using BIG-IQ until we kind of go through and clean all of that up. I was kind of thinking if there was some way of grouping configuration objects to maybe support having those conflicts while we work through them. So
in that specific conflict resolution scenario, we do have work coming later this year in the fourth quarter to be able to handle at least the F5 induced conflicts. So things like for profiles and monitors, so things like the client SSL profile changes on BIG-IP from 12.1 to 14.0. There are changes along the way, but BIG-IP keeps those things named client SSL. We're going to build into BIG-IQ the ability to do version-specific objects. We do have, and this is not so much in the LTM configuration, but in things like access or the APM management, we have the ability to do location-specific objects. So it's another way to, in that area, is a way to work around those sort of things. I'd be interested to talk to you afterwards to understand what types of objects are you seeing in conflict, and what was it that led you to have those situations where they were in conflict? Was it a design decision to say we always want to name this thing the same across all of our environments and have different contents, or otherwise? So.
Along that line, isn't that what we're trying to push for with AS3 to begin with?
So
We want the same application deployed in production, development, QA devices with the same objects, but different environments, different locations for devices.
Well, so what we're trying to enforce with BIG-IQ and with AS3 is that standardization of those objects across the environment. So the problem that that customers are hitting is they have, in one case, the SSL profile that they're using has certain contents, and in another place it has different contents, and but the same name. So we're trying to enforce that for those things that are shared objects, or at least shared objects from the BIG-IQ definition, that the contents of those objects are the same everywhere. The main reason we do that is it allows you to edit that object in one place on the BIG-IQ and get that update out to everywhere. If we flip the switch completely the other way, and we made all of the objects device specific, then we would lose the ability to do sort of that central editing in one place and push them out.
More speaking on the options in terms of like a virtual server, pointing that name, virtual server, storing requests with the same name.
Right, and actually in BIG-IQ, virtual servers are a device-specific object, so it is already flipped to that other way to say you're managing these on a device-by-device basis.
So probably what we'll do, we're going to pause questions here. I'm going to go through this part, and then we'll come back to questions if that's all right, just so we get enough time to get through everything. Is this on? You hear me okay? Okay. All right. Well, okay, so I'm going to talk about object level versus application template management. So in BIG-IQ 5.4, we introduced this notion of application templates. So for those of you that use BIG-IQ today, how many people are just using it for like device level backup and things of that nature? Okay. Yeah, licensing and things of that nature. Who's using it for virtual server management, actual deployment of the ADC configuration? Okay, so not very many. So one of the challenges we've had, we call that the object model. BIG-IP supports a lot of different, thousands of configuration options. But within BIG-IQ, we don't have support for all those same options. We have support for some of them. And we've added more and more with each release. And one of the challenges that we've had with the ADC model, you can see here, there's a lot of powerful options, but it can be confusing, especially to somebody that's not familiar with F5 or our terminology. What's a pool? What's a virtual server? How are these things interrelated? And when you go to configure things in the menus, they were not workflow based. Right? So it became very challenging. You'd have to know to set up a pool first, then go ahead and set up a virtual server. Oh, I forgot my profiles. Let me go back and set those up. So there really was no workflow to guide you through the configuration. And we wanted to work with application owners to make things simpler. And we saw that things were just too complicated for application owners. So one of the things that we've done here is we came up with the notion of a service catalog. So in that service catalog, we now have application templates. And these will allow you to create templated configurations for things like SSL offload or a standard HTTP application to go ahead and roll that out. The nice thing about this is you're able to apply RBAC. So if you're an application owner, I can give you access to a service catalog, and you can go ahead and roll out your own application. So you don't have to be there to approve every step along the way. I can give you the ability to kind of self-service to, I want to create a virtual server with all the profiles and everything associated with it, the I rules maybe that you need, and I want to go ahead and roll that out. But I'm not an expert, right? So maybe you're not an expert as an app owner. So how do we make that consumable for you to go ahead and roll out that application very, very quickly? So with the service catalog, we allow kind of the network operations and the security operations groups to define the policies and the templates, and then give them to the app owners so that they can go ahead and roll out the apps. So as an example, you know, if you're rolling out today a virtual server config, in the virtual server config, maybe there's 60 or 70 configuration items. You don't want to expose that to the app owner. They're not going to know what any of these things are. So what you can do is you can pick the smart defaults in the application template, and you can hide those from the consumer, from the app owner, and give them a small list. So as an example here, I've got 4 configuration items in this form that an application owner can fill out, so they can now deploy something because you have set all the smart defaults. So what it means is that you have to come up with standards, and what are the templates that I want to offer? If every app is custom, it kind of gets very difficult for you to offer a service here. And really what you want to do is come out with a small sample, you know, a small number of templates that can be reused over and over for different types of applications. So that's something that we have here. You can now deploy, and BIG-IQ will then deploy all the objects associated with that application out onto your big IPs. So this is what the application template interface looks like for the expert, the domain expert. So if I'm an F5 admin, I know all these things. I'm going to come into the virtual server config, and this is under application, and I can set up what we call a application template. And in the template, I've got a whole list of things that I can set up: virtual servers, pools, nodes, monitors, everything associated with that application. Now, within here, you'll see these basically checkboxes with editable next to them. And what that means is anything where I check editable, that means I'm going to allow the app owner or the consumer of this template to actually see and configure that option. So here, I'm saying I'm going to allow the app owner to configure maybe the destination IP address and the port, and that's it. And that's all that they're going to see. These other things, I can pick the defaults. Maybe I want to turn on SNAT automap, but I don't want to expose that to the app owner. So I can configure that and set it up here, and it's in the template, but the app owner will never actually see that. Right? And then we have this nice preview button up here. So after you go through and you fill out the template, and you can also attach security policies, which is new in 6.0. So it's not just rolling out LTM configuration, it's attaching an ASM, a WAF policy as well to the application. The app owner doesn't have to know that that's there. They just deploy the app. And this preview button here will then show you, out of the, whatever, 60 options here, they're only going to see this. So we're simplifying what this looks like to an actual consumer. So once they roll out, and you've got, let me just build this out here. So you've got a lot of different reporting that is available in BIG-IQ. So we've kind of, over different releases, when BIG-IQ first started, it was really about configuration management. There was no monitoring. There was no visualization of anything. And we've added a lot as we've gone release to release. So now you've got, you know, your health and performance of device level. So you can see, make sure things are up and available. You've got statistics and analytics now at the LTM, APM, SWG, which is our secure web gateway, VPN, and DNS. So we've greatly enhanced the dashboards inside of BIG-IQ to give you that level of information. You've also got centralized health and security reports. And Kyle kind of talked on some of these. You can search through iHealth. You can now upload to iHealth and come back and get the results and actually have that available on BIG-IQ. You can actually get all the way down to iRule stats. Stats on individual iRules down to the individual operations centrally in BIG-IQ. So there's a lot of things that we can do here. We also get the events, and Kyle touched on this as well. All the auditing is available centrally inside of BIG-IQ. Now, this is the new kind of interface when you use these application templates that I talked about. So first of all, you have to use the app templates to get some of these views I'm going to take you through here in a second. So when you use a template to create what we call an application inside of BIG-IQ, we can now give you analytics on a per app basis. And I know that's what we keep hearing from our customers is, I really want to drill down. I don't want just box level stats. I want to be able to drill down. And an app is having a problem. The app owner wants to drill down, and maybe they want to see analytics, and you want to give them through RBAC the capability of viewing the applications that they control, so they don't have to call into the help desk. You can say, here, I'll give you a role. You can go in. You can see the status of your own apps. So what you'll see here, I might be an app owner. I might have 7 or 8 apps under my management. This would be my dashboard, and I get my health up here for each app that you see. And I guess I get a pointer on here. I could use this. You'll see your top apps by things like longest response time, top transactions, connections, and those will adjust in real time based on the performance of your apps. You'll also get high-level information on the top right here for security. If you've got WAF enabled or ASM enabled on any of your applications, if you're under attack, that's going to show up here. How many apps might need attention? How much traffic is being blocked? How many successful attacks have come through? You get high-level visibility here. And then each of your apps will have a column here, again, which is real-time, on HTTP transactions, connections, new connections, and app response time, and then whether or not you have WAF enabled. And all of these columns are sortable. So if you click on it, you can rank from low to high, high to low, based on whatever metric is important to you. So if app response time is important, I can come over here, click on this, and see the app with the longest response time. And then I can change the view from list or tile. So this would be similar information, but now I'm looking at a tile view instead of a list view, but it's the same type of information. I've got color-coded apps. I can see I've got one app that's red. I can click on that app, drill down, and get more information to find out what's actually going on inside of that app. And then apps can be deployed on what we call a service scaling group. Kyle touched on this earlier. We've introduced technology where we can scale out virtual editions. So I can start with one, and based on demand or CPU or some other metric, spin up other instances and balance traffic across them. So I can have an app deployed on top of an SSG or a traditional BIG-IP HA pair. If I drill down, so I had that, back in this view, I've got this one application that's red. All right, so I'm an app owner. I see a problem. I'm going to go ahead and click on it. Now I drill down. In the top right, I can see the health of my application. I can see my app response time. I see my security information. So I'm protected, which means I'm running WAF. And I can see the alert history here. And that's the alert history for this app. I don't have to grep through syslogs and figure out, hey, what's going on? I'm seeing filtered information just for this application. And then I can see any active alerts. So why is this application red? Well, the application response time exceeded a threshold that I configured. So that's why this is turning red. Down here, this is an abstraction layer. This is a way for us to present all the complex configuration that we have inside of BIG-IP in a simplified manner. So I can click on traffic management or security or servers, and I'll get different views down here in analytics based on where I'm clicking in that map. And you can see I've got response time overlaid here. So I can see the response time from the BIG-IP to the servers, but also from the clients coming into the BIG-IP. So I can see, do I have a delay on the front side or the back side of the BIG-IP? And then you've got your analytics layer here with filters where you can change the views and look at different types of analytics for this particular application. The other neat thing that we have is correlation. So you can turn events on or off, and if you turn them on, we'll overlay syslog events on top of the analytics. So here you might see, well, there was a blip in traffic here. Oh, yep, there was some sort of system event that happened here that correlates to that performance change. So it'll allow you to do correlation. And all of this can be filtered. These events here are categorized, and they have different log levels, and these are toggle switches to filter out noise. So if I have a lot of system events and I don't want to see them, I can click on this and that'll turn off all the system events and take them out of this view. Or maybe I'm only interested in critical errors or security. I can toggle different things on or off based on what's important to me as an app owner. And then the other nice feature that I like is you can come into the application and click on it and configure custom alert rules on when you want to get notified and when you want to change colors from yellow to red to green based on different thresholds. So you can do it on app response time, the server round trip time, client round trip time, different types of errors. You know, am I seeing server errors? Am I seeing too many 404s? If I get a certain percentage of 400 or 500 errors, I can, change the health. Or am I seeing TPS greater than a certain level? And I can configure a warning and a critical threshold. So when I turn yellow, when I turn red. So these are available on a per app basis. So I can have different thresholds for different applications. And as an app owner, I can come in and configure that. And that's it. So with that, I guess we'll open up with questions. We've still got some time here, I believe. Yeah, we still get a few minutes. You had a question? There you go. Yep.
So two questions. You might have answered these, or I think the answer is yes. So scheduling of configuration pushes. So I make a bunch of configurations, and I want to schedule them or push them in a certain window. I assume you could do that.
Yeah, so I talked about it. We didn't have a screenshot of it, but basically you can go in and you can set up all of the changes that you want to make on the BIG-IQ, and then we run what we call an evaluation job. And what that does during that time is it goes out and checks the configuration that's on the BIG-IP, takes a snapshot of the configuration that's on the BIG-IQ at that time, compares the information between those, gives you a list that you can review to say, yes, these are in fact all the changes that I want to push. And then after that evaluation is done, you have the ability to say, deploy it now or schedule that deployment for a later time.
Okay. And then managing like data lists, like a whitelist, that can be done through the, I guess, the user roles or the giving groups access to managing a data list?
I think it depends on what lists. So I know in the security area, we do have information or the ability to manage those.
Yeah, I think in the DOS
whitelists.
profile, you can reference whitelists in the DOS profile.
Okay.
And that's available inside of BIG-IQ.
Yeah, I want to give a group access to just managing.
Oh, is
that
there
list.
a role for that?
There isn't a default one, but you can use the fine-grained role-based
Yes,
access
I
control
figured that
to
was a
say,
yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
I've got a few questions for you. Is there any, if I need multiple BIG-IQ instances, is there any coordination between them, or are they just all standalone?
Currently, they are all standalone. We don't have a master of masters concept or a sync between the BIG-IQ instances.
Standalone HA pair, though. Yeah.
Right. HA pair, yes, but if they're in different data centers
so if I
or
have
whatever.
1,000 BIG-IPs or something, then
Right.
I'd have to segment them somehow.
Yes.
And are the templates exportable then? Can I take them from one instance and move them over to the other?
They are not exportable yet by the user.
Okay.
There is the functionality under the covers to be able to export them out and import them in. We're in our backlog. We have the ability to. We have in our backlog. We have a work item to expose that out to users. So you can do things like take it from one BIG-IQ cluster and put it on another.
Right. Yeah. And then are they available via API, the templates. So if I have another system, an orchestration system.
I probably should have covered that. I noticed as we went through it. So yeah, everything is available via REST API. We've published Ansible playbooks for the app templates. So those are out there and available. And the nice thing is if you come in the GUI and fill out one of the application template forms, there's a View Sample API button, which will actually give you the API call to deploy that. So we kind of help ease into that automation. So.
Okay. And the last one I've got is, can events and performance metrics be sent to an external system via like syslog or API calls?
So not today. Right now, we log them to our data collection devices. You can still set up your BIG-IP to have your sort of multiple logging profiles to log somewhere else, but BIG-IQ doesn't yet have the ability to pass that event information along to another system.
Okay.
Regarding reporting for APM specifically, do we have any reporting in BIG-IQ?
For APM?
Yes.
Yeah, so the question was, do we have reporting for APM and BIG-IQ? Yes, we have tons of reporting, down to the session level. You can see the event log or the logs for a particular session. You can kill sessions.
So we can export that as a PDF or CSV file?
So yes, in the access reporting, they do have the ability, I don't know if they can export it via PDF yet, but they definitely have the CSV file reporting for.
Okay. Regarding application owner access, there was one example where we can give restricted access to the application owner, so they can create virtual server.
Yep.
What if we have one virtual server, example for set of applications, and we want new application to be part of that as part of policy? So can we give restricted access on the policy itself instead of on the virtual server? So they can add new objects in the policy and they can create pool members as well.
I don't think I follow the scenario.
So there's policies, so I don't know if I caught. So were you talking like ASM policy and then you want to be able
No,
to?
I'm talking about LTM policies.
Okay.
So profiles, policies, yeah.
Yeah.
So virtual server is there.
Yeah.
One policy is attached to it, and that policy has multiple web URLs attached to it, right? So each URL is going to different pools,
Yep.
which has its own.
Oh, I see. So LTM policy.
Yes.
So in the app templates, that part is not exposed yet.
Okay.
Today, to get that functionality, we would utilize the scripting along with the template. So Kyle mentioned the user scripting. I could basically create a TMSH script to create the LTM policy, and I can apply that to the template. So when the template's deployed, the URL policy gets deployed. So the GUI option is not there yet, but that's something we're looking at adding very soon. So, yep.
I think we need to set up for our next. We're doing this same session again. If you want to stay and
Yeah, if there's other questions, we'll
be
hang
around,
out. So.
Especially in the Solution Expo. We'll be down there at the BIG-IP
Yeah.
Cloud Edition booth if you want to come find us.